up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as I give myself a jam-packed show, as we have a lot of volleyball to discuss, such as Indiana, the Hoosiers, winning not one, but 2 games on the West Coast, taking down USC and UCLA. Are the Hoosiers for real? Also, how about West Virginia? Country Roads take me home as they take down BYU in a 5-set barn burner. Also, we had Kansas knocking off Baylor as well in 5. And how about LSU knocking off Florida in some SEC action in 5 yesterday? And we also had Oklahoma, the Sooners, taking down Missouri in 5 as well. And we also had Sierra Canyon winning the Redondo Power Classic as they took down a very talented Archbishop Beachy team. And also we have the Beach Pro Tour Elite 16 headed to the United States as the next destination is in Newport Beach. So hand me a volleyball. Set next. So I'm about to get the volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio. Your feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way to episode 319 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on YouTube and on X. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, TikTok, and Instagram. Also subscribe to IE Sports Radio on YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. We're trying to reach 500 subscribers, and with your help, we could definitely make it happen. So thank you to everyone that has already supported IE Sports Radio, and for those that haven't supported in terms of following or subscribe to IE Sports Radio, definitely do so. For the last 11 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports days around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout out to both of our sponsors, Plant Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Vital Apparel. So without any further delay, let's get on into what our sponsors are all about. I will see you in a little bit.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out both of our sponsors. We appreciate them for being the official sponsors of iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point IE. You can also follow me on TikTok as well, at set_point IE as well. I need to get back on my TikTok game because I am slacking, and that is no bueno. You can also follow me personally as well on X as well, at Teran Rodriguez 1. You can also follow me on Instagram too, at set_point IESR. So without any further delay, let us get on into the volleyball action. So feels good to have the 6-year anniversary pretty much over and done with. I mean, it was great to have celebrated Set Point being 6 years old. I think it's an outstanding accomplishment, but it's time to get back to the basics and let us get back to our regularly scheduled program. So let's talk a little NCAA women's volleyball to start the show, just because, well, it's NCAA women's volleyball, and that's pretty much the big thing, the big market in terms of what is going on in the volleyball world. So we didn't have anything too big on Monday or Tuesday, just because that's kind of like the weekdays where you don't really see too much action unless you see like a massive upset that no one saw coming. But on Wednesday, we actually had Michigan taking down number 10 Minnesota in 4. So if you remember last week's show, I said that this was going to be an intriguing matchup just because Michigan was actually started off pretty well. They actually started off pretty well to start the season, and then they kind of hit a little bit of a snag come conference play. Whereas Minnesota, they were top 10, and I think they had won like 10 straight. They hadn't really lost a match ever since they lost to Texas A&M. But they were pretty banged up. They had lost 3 of their top players due to season-ending injuries. And against Michigan, they did go on the road, and they took the first set, but then Michigan just kind of stormed through them in the next 3 sets. And I think this was a very big win for Michigan. First and foremost, it's their first ranked win since 2021, and it's their first ranked win under head coach Aaron Vertu. So I think it's a massive win for Michigan. They were led by Allison Jacobs, who had 20 kills, while Lydia Johnson had 14 kills. Ella Demetrician added 15 kills, while Jenna Haynes had 8 kills, while hitting 667. Overall, Michigan hit a whopping 383 while holding Minnesota to under 93. So, holding them to 93, under 100, as they did not have one player in double digits in terms of kills, as Julia Hansen led the way with 7 kills, while Carly Gillick added 5 kills. So this is something that someone told me regarding Minnesota, is that they weren't a top 10 team. So, the rankings had them as a top 10 team. It's just that they just didn't look like a top 10 team because they didn't play anybody, and everyone else kind of kept losing their way and whatnot. So that notification came courtesy of Carlos Suave. He said Minnesota wasn't a top 10 team. They hadn't played anyone. Julia Hansen looked gassed the entire match and was taken out. I think the pressure of carrying her team got to her. And I think it's a very good point, just because, well, Minnesota, ever since they had played Texas A&M, they haven't really lost, but they hadn't really beaten anyone big time either. So I think for Minnesota, this was kind of the case of they were finally going to get a challenge, especially on the road. And Michigan has been vastly improved. I think Minnesota kind of got the jump from the early get-go, but then everything just kind of went down the toilet following following that first set. So I think for Michigan, this is probably the biggest win they've had in a minute. And this definitely helps out their resume of trying to make the NCAA tournament. And Aaron Virtue should be quite proud of herself, because Michigan has kind of gone through it ever since Mark Rosen departed. And it hasn't been easy to replace him and replace his winning ways. But this was a great win for Michigan. Then we also had number 12 TCU taking down Kansas in 4. Just another standard, nice, entertaining Big 12 volleyball match. As TCU, they bounced back after losing to Baylor last week, as they were led by Becca Kelly, who had 21 kills. Evan Hendricks added 20 kills, and Lauren Murphy had 7 kills. TCU hit 352, which was pretty impressive, while holding Kansas to under 200, being 193 to be exact. Grace Nelson led, or actually Reese Potasic led the way for Kansas with 13 kills on a hitting percentage of 348, while Grace Nelson added 11 kills and Selena Laban added 10 kills. So overall, TCU kind of need a little bit of a bounce back after losing a heartbreaker to Baylor. And I think this was kind of a great win for them. I just think that they needed this win just because I think losing to Baylor was kind of a bad taste in their mouth after they had so much success early on. So a great win for TCU. Another tough one for Kansas, but what can you do? And then we had number 19 BYU sweep or taking down Cincinnati in 4. Number 15 Baylor swept Houston in kind of the Texas two-step match, and then number 25 North Carolina swept Duke, which was not too surprising. Then on Thursday we had number 7 Wisconsin taking out Illinois in straight sets. I kind of said that this was going to be a big test for Illinois. They looked good the previous week, but unfortunately they just did not look as good as they did in this match against Wisconsin. Still got to give it up to Illinois. I think they're kind of a bubble team at this point when it comes to making the NCAA tournament, but they're kind of going to need to afford not to lose any big-time matches. So we'll see how the Fighting Illini stack up going down the stretch. Then number 14, Creighton swept Marquette. This one I was a little surprised at, but except Creighton is starting to play better volleyball. It helps when they have a set starting lineup and they're facing someone in their realm of the Big East. So I think for Creighton, it was a good win for them. I mean, Marquette is still having a solid year, and I expect to see them in the NCAA tournament, but I just think that they're just not going to be on the level of Creighton. There's just no better way of saying it. And then this match was pretty fun. This one took place in Westwood as number 13 Purdue reverse swept number 24 UCLA. So first 2 sets, it was looking like UCLA was looking like they were proving why they were ranked. And then in the third set, UCLA had they had 4 match points, but to the credit of Purdue, they were able to dodge all of them, and they eventually took the third set 29-27. They eventually took the fourth set 25-23 and the fifth set 15-11. As remember this name, Kenna Woolard, she had 39 kills, she had 369, and she had 9 digs. Grace Heaney also added 11 kills, and Akasha Anderson posted 9 kills. Purdue as a team, they hit 236 while registering 11 blocks as a team and 62 digs, which I think is pretty low. But then again, UCLA had 62 digs as well. UCLA had 8.5 blocks as a team and hit 222 as they were led by Eliana Urzua, who had 22 kills. Sheridan Leverett added 17 kills. Mariana Singletary added 11 kills. And Brooklyn Briscoe had 10 kills. So, interestingly enough, no PK Kong. And it looks like Kate Duffy is going to be the setter going forward, which I kind of feel bad for Zayna Meyer, but I digress. Duffy had a whopping 62 assists, and she had 11 digs, which I thought was pretty impressive. And Lola Schumacher had 20 digs, but unfortunately, it was just not enough. If you're UCLA, you kind of got to be kicking yourself just because you missed out on a golden opportunity to post another big-time win in the Big Ten. So, gotta go back to the drawing board, get up off the mat if you're UCLA. Then we jump to Friday in this Big Ten matchup. This was the rematch that everyone had anticipated. This actually was televised on Fox. It was number 1 Nebraska playing at number 16 Penn State at Rec Hall. This was highly anticipated just because Penn State was the team that ended Nebraska's season last year in the Final Four, reverse sweeping the Huskers. This time around, Nebraska, let me just say it was BTA. Nebraska swept Penn State 25-6, 25-15, and 25-13. It was just a whooping. They really took charge to Penn State. I know Kennedy Martin had 11 kills, but she only hit 182. And Penn State as a whole, they only had 16 kills as a team. Kennedy Martin had 11 of those kills. Man, that was just as bad of a night as Penn State would get, especially at Rec Hall. Meanwhile, for Nebraska, they're led by their Rebecca Alec. She had 9 kills. Virginia Adriano had 8 kills. The kills were spread out in terms of Nebraska's numbers, and they hit 437 while holding Penn State to negative 111. Or I'm sorry, negative 114. So overall, this just shows how deep Nebraska is, and Nebraska really took it to Penn State. I get it. Penn State is having a lot of problems. They're still trying to get used to not having Izzy Stark. But honestly, they have to figure this out ASAP. Otherwise, Penn State just is not going to be able to have a deep tournament run. I just don't see them having a deep tournament run with all the turmoil that they've had this year. And then we had number 3 Kentucky sweeping Ole Miss. Number 4 Stanford swept Notre Dame. Number 5 Pitt swept Clemson. Number 6 Louisville swept Cal. I want to say that was the match that honored Carly Lloyd. Not sure. Anyway, number 11 SMU took down Georgia Tech in 4. Number 18 Kansas took down number 15 Baylor in 5. This was a fun one right here. This is another case of Big 12 madness, and the Big 12 is just all over the place as Kansas wound up winning the match 19-25, 25-19, 25-13, 25-27, and 15-13 as the Jayhawks were led by Jovana Zelenovic, who had 16 kills. Reese Potasic had 14 kills, while Ryan Swanson added 13 kills. Kansas hit 316 while holding Baylor to only 176. The Bears were led by Ksenia Rachmanachik and Victoria Davis, who both had 14 kills, while Manuela Bibine and Bailey Warren both had 9 kills. Again, this is just another case of the Big 12 just being all over the place. I mean, many could say that maybe Baylor kind of got a little fortunate last week when they played TCU, but honestly, with all the upsets that have been happening in the Big 12, nothing is guaranteed. So that's a great win for Kansas. They love to go 5. It just seems like them and 5 setters just go hand in hand with one another. Also on Friday, we had this little fun matchup. We had Indiana taking down USC in 4. So USC got the better of the Hoosiers in the first set, 25-15. But then the next 3 sets were pretty much all Indiana for the most part. As the Hoosiers, they still remain undefeated in Big Ten play as Avery Tatum led the way with 14 kills, while Jaden Jagger added 12 kills. Indiana hit 252 while holding USC to under 200, just a little, as Mia Taverdi led the way for USC with 17 kills, while Leah Ford added 10 kills. London with Jay had 9 kills, and Indiana did a pretty solid job of holding Abigail Mullen in check. She hit in the negatives while only having 7 kills. So for USC, this kind of is one of those matches where their youth kind of got exposed. And it's not ultimately a bad thing, but look, if USC wants to be successful this season, I just think they're going to need to play a whole lot better than that. And they're just going to have to learn on the fly in terms of playing better in terms of facing these Big Ten opponents. Because Indiana's good. I think Indiana doesn't get a whole lot of love when it comes to the Big Ten just because of all the better teams in the Big Ten. So you got to give it up for Steve Aird's Hoosiers and how they were able to pick up a win on the West Coast. Then we had another upset. We had West Virginia. Don't look now. West Virginia, I totally forgot that this team was having a pretty darn good season. West Virginia, they took down number 19 BYU in 5. And you got to remember who is the head coach of West Virginia. I'm blanking. It's the former Washington State coach. I'm blanking on her name, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But right now, this West Virginia team, they're on a little bit of a heater. This is probably one of the best kept secrets in volleyball. And it's Jen Greeny. That's her name, Jen Greeny. What she did for Washington State was absolutely amazing. And now what she's doing for West Virginia is also quite amazing, as Cassidy Tanton led the way with 21 kills. Trinity Sheridan added 11 kills for West Virginia. West Virginia only hit 156, which, I mean, you're facing BYU. Of course, your numbers are going to be fairly low because BYU is a pretty darn good defensive team. Even though West Virginia did outdig them by 5, and they did get out-blocked. Oh, no, they did out-block them. I'm just not doing my math correctly. Meanwhile, for BYU, they were led by Sully Davis, who had 21 kills. Claire Little Chambers added 18 kills. But for West Virginia, man, this has to be one of the biggest wins in the Jen Greeny era, just because I think that's awesome that Jen Greeny is turning around another great program. And honestly, man, Washington State must be kicking themselves on letting Jen Greeny go. But it is what it is. And also Burdette, if I recall correctly, I think Burdette Greeny is also part of the coaching staff as well when it comes to West Virginia's women's volleyball team. But it's great to see Jen Greeny having a lot of success with West Virginia. I think if she stays the course, she's going to turn that program around like she turned around Washington State. And that's pretty phenomenal if you ask me. And I got to tip my, so Burdette Greeny is the associate head coach. So if you're not putting 2 + 2 together, the two are husband and wife. And I think their assistant coaches, Aubrey Becker and Mike Becker, are also maybe husband and wife, but I don't know. Bro. Anyway, but yeah, that's pretty darn cool if you ask me. So overall, that's a great win for West Virginia, and it's actually their first ranked win at home, and they set an attendance record. So great job to West Virginia. No, I'm not going to sing Country Road and whatnot. And then, speaking of Power 4 conferences, we had another close call right here. We had number 20 Tennessee taking down LSU in 5. This was a pretty solid win for the Lady Vols, and LSU isn't really the worst team in the SEC. They just don't get highlighted enough just because they don't have the wins to back it up. As Tennessee was led by Hayden Kubik, who had 27 kills, while Peyton Chapman had 13 kills. Mackenzie Plant had 9 kills. Tennessee, as a team, they hit 350, which was pretty darn impressive, even though LSU hit 316, as the Tigers were led by Journey Robinson, who had 33 kills. Nia Washington had 14 kills. Robinson almost had half the kills that LSU had as a team. That just goes to show that Journey Robinson is the real deal for this LSU team. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough, as the Lady Vols held on against the Tigers on the road. Then we had Missouri sweeping Arkansas, Miami sweeping NC State, and then Florida taking down Auburn in 4 to close off the notable matches on Friday. But we had this matchup on Friday as well. I hate to have to bring up the Big West, but this was a good matchup. Long Beach State took down UC Santa Barbara in 4 sets, which I thought was a very good win for the Beach. It was actually the Beach's first test in the Big West, and they passed it with flying colors. And I wish I could have attended this, but look, UC Santa Barbara is receiving votes. And considering that the Big West isn't going to be seeing a whole lot of big-time wins in terms of like ranked versus ranked, this is actually a pretty strong win for the Beach, considering Long Beach State, they've played some teams tough. They played Stanford tough. They played UCLA tough. And UC Santa Barbara, who was receiving votes in the AVCA polls, this was also a tough match. But I think Long Beach State performed well at home, and they were able to pull off the win. And that's huge for them, just because that one can go a long way in terms of possibly seeing them make the NCAA tournament. I mean, there's still a long way to go in terms of the Big West, and they still have the Big West Conference tournament, but who knows? Maybe that can actually help them in terms of maybe getting an at-large. They did have to win 2 close sets in sets 1 and 3, but I think those were kind of the tipping point for the Beach, because they eventually wound up winning set 4 quite comfortably. And the best part is that Logan King didn't even need to have a big night. They had Sydney Hammaker take some of the pressure off of her. Elisa Gee also was pretty solid. Ryan Sheffy and Nico Thomas both were solid in the middle. Again, solid in the middle, but not great in the middle. But hey, what can you do? A win's a win, and it's always tough to win the Big West. Anyway, So moving on to Saturday, I'll get into a little bit of Long Beach State later on when it comes to the Saturday match. Saturday, we had number 1 Nebraska taking down Rutgers. Rutgers set an attendance record with 8,000 in attendance, so great job to the Rutgers and Nebraska fans that made their way out to Jersey Mike's Arena. And shout out to Ira Thor, who was on the mic when it came to that, former friend of Set Point and former NVA broadcaster. Now he's broadcasting for NJIT and also broadcasting for Rutgers and probably PA announcing as well. Anyway, so Nebraska's rested most of their starters. So even when they rest most of their starters, Nebraska is pretty deep, if you ask me. Like, Nebraska's depth is just out of this world. So, and again, who's slowing down this Nebraska team? Not too many teams. Then you also had number 8, Arizona State sweeping Utah. Number 12, TCU swept Texas Tech. Number 13, Purdue swept number 17, USC on the road. Nice win for Purdue. I'm starting to get the feeling that Purdue might actually be better than what I thought they would be. I thought Purdue would be a little overhyped, overrated, especially after how they lost to Purdue last week. But they kind of responded well after winning not 1, but 2 games on the West Coast, which was pretty darn impressive if you ask me. Then you had number 14, Creighton, taking down DePaul in 4. Number 25, North Carolina swept Duke again. And then this upset was a big thing. Indiana swept number 24, UCLA, on the road in 4 sets, which I thought was pretty darn impressive. So the first set, UCLA took it 25-20. It seems like Indiana gets off to slow starts when it comes to matches, but they always respond well. Second set, they wound up winning it 25-17. Third set, Indiana withstood a UCLA comeback. They wound up winning that 25-23. And the fourth set, UCLA, I think, got off to a 9-2 start, and it looked like this match was destined for 5 sets. But thankfully for those gutty little Hoosiers, they were able to turn the tide and win that fourth set 25-21, which was pretty impressive if you ask me. So the Hoosiers were led by they were led by Candela Alonso Corceles, who had 18 kills, and she hit 313. Avery Tatum had 17 kills. She hit 375. Jaden Jagger added 11 kills, along with 10 digs. Indiana as a team, they hit 262 while holding UCLA to 254, which isn't terrible. They limited UCLA's blocking, as UCLA only had 5 blocks as a team, where Indiana, they were throwing a block party. They had 13 blocks as a team, which was pretty impressive, even though UCLA did pretty much do good in the dig department. But UCLA was led by Sheridan Leverett, who had 21 kills. Eliana Urzua had 10 kills, and Brooklyn Briscoe added 9 kills. For UCLA, they're lucky they are 500 right now. I'm sure they're not going to dip under 500. I'm certain that UCLA should make the NCAA tournament. I mean, I feel UCLA might be a bubble team just because they still have the losses to Pepperdine, which is not helping them by any means. They have the losses to TCU, which TCU, if they keep winning and if they win the Big 12, then that could actually help out UCLA. But other than the Penn State win, I don't think UCLA has really proven themselves to me. I mean, they have such a stacked roster, but they just haven't really screamed they are a contender. And this seems to be the UCLA of every single year. Like, they look good on paper, but they just don't look good when it comes to the big-time matches that truly matter most. And closing off Saturday, a couple things for the Big West. I actually attended Long Beach State versus Cal Poly. I was a little late to the match, but I didn't really miss too much, as this one was a pretty fun match. Long Beach State took down Cal Poly in 4 sets. Now, Cal Poly, you got to remember, Cal Poly is the only team in the Big West to pull off a ranked win this year, to have a ranked win in under their belts. No, we're not counting Long Beach State beating receiving votes UC Santa Barbara. I'm sorry, Long Beach State fans. It doesn't count. But Long Beach State beating Cal Poly, I thought, was big because if you all remember last year, I know Long Beach State lost most of its roster and starting lineup to last year, but Long Beach State did see its season come to an end against Cal Poly last year in the Big West Conference Championships in the semifinal round. And one person did tell me that she doesn't think that Long Beach State, the Long Beach State loss to Cal Poly was a motivation factor. This would have been such a great question had I stayed for the post-game press conference, but it was a long day for me. I really could not wait to get home and to just relax a bit and whatnot, because I was on the road all day from like maybe 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So I am so glad. I hate to have missed the post-game press conference, but it is what it is. Anyway, so Long Beach State, they took down Cal Poly in 4 sets, 25-20, 25-18, 26-24, and 27-25. The Beach was led by Logan King, who had 21 kills. She had 400, and she had 8 digs. Elisa Gee had 14 kills, and she had chipped in 12 digs, which was also pretty good if you ask me. Sydney Hamaker, she had 9 kills. She has a wicked topspin serve. Long Beach State only missed 6 serves for a team that really serves aggressively. Even though they only had 3 service aces, they pretty much benefited from having a great night in terms of its blocking stats and its digging stats. And even though they hit 193, it was still a good night for them offensively. Now, Cal Poly, they were led by Kendall Bashir, who I have dubbed her as the smiling assassin. Because if you look at her, she always has a big smile on her face, but when she hits the volleyball court, it's game time. She led the way with 16 kills, while Chloe Lelouge added 13 kills. She had 462. Emma Frederick had 10 kills. The Mustangs hit 168 while registering 14 blocks. They actually outblocked Long Beach State, which is pretty good if you ask me, but it wasn't enough. My biggest problem for Cal Poly is they should have fed the middle more. I don't think Long Beach State had an answer for Cal Poly when they set the middle. It's like every time they set the ball to Chloe Lelouge or Charlotte Kelly, Long Beach State just did not have an answer. Cal Poly's middles had a combined 18 kills on only 4 hitting errors. Like, Lelouge was probably the hot hand. I just, don't get me wrong, Kendall Bashir is a fantastic player, but Cal Poly should have fed Chloe Lelouge more. I even asked Caroline Walters about that, just because Long Beach State just did not have the answer. I mean, Long Beach State is a great defensive team. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that if Cal Poly sets the middle more, then I think they might have a little bit more success than Long Beach State. But who am I to judge? I mean, Long Beach State did kind of win a couple of good break points. The third set, I thought, kind of got away from Long Beach State. They probably should have won it in 3. They were up 18-16, and they had a match point opportunity. But credit to the gritty Mustangs. They are pretty darn good, and they were able to turn it around in that third set. And Long Beach State, they had their opportunities to pretty much try to pull away, but Cal Poly was just sticking around. And also, to Cal Poly's credit, they dodged 3 match points, I want to say. No, they dodged 2. They dodged 2 match points, but the third match point was put down by Sydney Hamaker. But overall, Cal Poly, look, it was a tough week for them. They got swept by UC San Diego on the road, and they lost to Long Beach State on the road. I think they're still trying to get used to not having Tommy Stockham, but I think Kendall Bashir is probably the best player for them to kind of fulfill that role. Their middles are still pretty strong as ever. Emma Frederick is still pretty darn good at this volleyball thing and whatnot. And maybe even get Annabelle Falcon involved a little bit more if you're Cal Poly too. But Cal Poly, I don't think this loss or those 2 losses are indicative of the team that they are. I just think they just kind of had a rough week. They're going to need to really turn it around ASAP because they've got UC Santa Barbara tomorrow. This is being recorded on Monday, by the way. And then, speaking of the Big West, we had another little bit of a Big West banger. We had CSUN sweeping Hawaii, which actually was their first win over Hawaii in a little over 11 years. I think it was like a 13-match losing streak that was snapped. Hawaii, they're just going through it. They found out that Stella Idemi is out for the season as well. And you got to remember, Taylor Hawkins is also out for the year as well. So Hawaii is just going through this, and it's just not fun times for the Rainbow Wahine. Meanwhile, for the Matadors, they were led by Amara Smith, who had 12 kills. Like I said, CSUN had 13 blocks compared to Hawaii's 2. That just does not get the job done if you're the Rainbow Wahine. And I get it if they're still going through it in terms of like injuries, but they got to figure it out ASAP. I'm still not going to give up on them, and I don't think Hawaii fans should or anyone else. If you're a volleyball fan, you still keep an eye on Hawaii, because this week is going to be the week that they could turn things around, because they've got UC Santa Barbara and Cal Poly at Stan Sheriff Center. So if there's ever a time for them to come up big, there's the time, just because I think the potential is there for Hawaii. It's just that them being inexperienced and banged up just does not do them any justice. Jumping to Sunday, we had this banger of a matchup. Number 6, Louisville took down number 4, Stanford in 4. This was a great win for the Cardinals. This was played on ESPN, by the way. So this seems to be another one of those slates that ESPN is televising at least one NCAA women's volleyball match a week, which I think is awesome sauce. And Louisville winning on the road is pretty big, if you ask me, as the Cardinals were led by Peyton Pearson, who had 15 kills. Chloe Chicoine and Cara Cressy both had 13 kills, and Calista Blackshear had 11 kills. So this was a rematch of last year's Elite 8 match, where Louisville defended their title, while Stanford was led by Aaliyah Rubin, who had 19 kills. Jordan Harvey had 14 kills. Lizzie Andrew had 12 kills, and Erica Sayer had 7 kills. Stanford hit 258, while Louisville hit 304. So Louisville also had 11 blocks and 60 digs, while Stanford had 8 blocks and 58 digs. So this was kind of a good little win for the Cardinals. Winning on the road is never an easy thing. I know Stanford doesn't really – this is no knock on Stanford. I've been told I know Stanford doesn't have the attendance numbers like maybe Nebraska or Louisville or Pitt or any of the other Power 4 teams have, but it's still not easy because you're going from coast to coast. So I think it's a great win for Louisville, especially winning on national TV. That's pretty darn impressive. Then number 2, Texas took down Mississippi State in 3. Number 5, Pitt took down Georgia Tech in 4. I kind of figured that was going to be a little bit of a test for the Panthers, but Georgia Tech isn't the same Georgia Tech team as they are in years past. Number 7, Wisconsin swept Michigan, but it kind of came at a price because unfortunately for Wisconsin, they did lose Charlie Furbringer to an injury. She had a joust at the net with the opposing player, but unfortunately, she was kind of had an arm injury. She was in a shoulder sling, so she went out, and Addie Horner had to check in and fulfill the setting duties for Furbringer. And Charlie only played 1 set, so if you're a Wisconsin fan, you're hoping that the extent of this injury isn't terrible. I was told by Dennis Punzel, the beat writer who covers Wisconsin, that Kelly Sheffield said that he's hoping that it's not a long-term deal and it's only like day to day and not week to week and whatnot. So we'll have to wait and see. But Addie Horner, remember the name. She's going to hopefully fulfill the role of setter for Wisconsin. And then we had number 9, Texas A&M sweeping Alabama. Number 10, Minnesota bouncing back with a 4-set win over Northwestern. Number 11, SMU swept Clemson. And then we had number 16, Penn State outlasting Maryland in 5. Man, if you're a Penn State fan, you kind of got to be wondering what is going on with the Nittany Lions. It's like, it just seems like they're not the Penn State that they were last year. I get they lost a lot to graduation like Jess Mersick, but they still have quite a number of good players from last year's team, like Caroline Jervicius and Maggie Mendelson. It just feels like they're missing an identity. And I know Kennedy Martin just continues to put up great numbers, but and I guess I should also mention that Penn State still has Gillian Grimes, but still, it's like Penn State just doesn't have its identity. It's like, they're struggling when they're having a tough time against Maryland of all teams. So Penn State's got to figure this out ASAP, just because the competition's only going to get tougher and tougher. Then we had Miami of Florida sweeping Wake Forest. And then we had 2 upsets in the SEC. The first one, we had Oklahoma taking down Missouri in 5. This was a great win for the Sooners. They're having a sneaky good season, and their 5-set win was actually a reverse sweep. So first set, I felt Oklahoma kind of let that slip through their fingers. Second set was pretty much Missouri for the most part. Third, fourth, and fifth set were mostly Oklahoma for a majority of the rest of the way, as Imani Bush led the way. Alexis Shelton led the way for Oklahoma with 25 kills, while Imani Bush added 18 kills. Mizzo was led by Kaylin Alexander, who had 18 kills, while Janet Damaris had 11 kills. So great win for Oklahoma. They're starting to make a case for making the NCAA tournament, but we shall see when it comes to them. And then the other SEC upset, we had LSU knocking off number 23 Florida in 5. This was a very good win for the Tigers because it's been a minute since they've beaten Florida. And LSU, Journey Robinson, she is just on a whole other level. She had 34 kills in 12 digs. She might be up for ABCA Player of the Week. I'm just going to say it right now. Don't be surprised if Journey Robinson wins ABCA Player of the Week from last week. Then you had Nia Washington having 14 kills, and she had 16 digs. I should also mention that Journey Robinson had over half the kills that LSU had in this matchup. So give Journey Robinson her flowers and give LSU the respect that they deserve, because beating Florida is no easy factor. I get it. Florida is a little bit down just because they've had a few departures here and there from players, and they have a new head coach, but still, LSU pulling off that statement win, pretty impressive. All right, that is that for NCAA Week 6 in terms of recapping. So let's go to the ABCA/Teraflex Division I Women's Volleyball poll. So the top 3 is still the same: Nebraska, Texas, Kentucky. Don't ask why Kentucky's still number 3. Even though Pitt beat them, but I digress. Anyway, so some newcomers into the poll. You have Indiana checking in at number 20. They had the biggest jump because they went from not ranked to number 20. So bravo to Indiana. By the way, Indiana's win over UCLA actually has them at 4-0 in Big Ten Conference play. It's the first time they've been 4-0 in Big Ten Conference play since 1985. So great job to Indiana. Again, great job to Steve Aird's team. Put some respect on that man's name. And then Colorado also finally checks into the AVCA coaches, into the AVCA poll, as they check in at number 24. Thank you for putting some respect on Colorado and Indiana. It really, really means a lot. So great job to those two. And I still kind of wonder why Texas is okay. Here's the thing. Texas and Nebraska are the only 2 teams that are undefeated in terms of NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I. But I feel Texas might have an argument to be number 1 over Nebraska just because of their resume. I know Texas needed 5 to beat the likes of Stanford and Louisville, whereas Nebraska swept Stanford with the greatest of ease. But again, Texas has an argument to possibly be number 1, but some are even saying that people are underestimating this Nebraska team, but nobody's underestimating Nebraska by any means. I think Nebraska, they are earning my respect. They're earning everyone's respect, and I still think it might be a little early to say this, but I think it's safe to say Texas and Nebraska are on a collision course for one another in the national championship. But we shall see. There's obviously some other good teams like Kentucky and Pitt and Louisville. So I won't jump the gun too much. But anyway, let's jump to week 7 of the NCAA women's volleyball season in terms of previewing. So Wednesday, you've got number 20 Tennessee. You've got Tennessee versus Texas. Tennessee is actually number 17. All right, let's see how the Lady Vols do against Texas on the road. This is going to be a fun matchup. We have 4 ranked on ranked. We got 3 ranked on ranked matchups. So Tennessee, Texas is one of them. I want to see what Tennessee can do against Texas, but Texas is just too darn. But Texas, I think, is just too darn stacked. So we'll see. Then we have number 3 Kentucky taking on number 9 Texas A&M. All right, this one's going to be a big test for Texas A&M. Let's see if they truly belong in the top 10, and let's see if they can truly contend for an SEC crown. Because Kentucky is really good, but we also got to remember that the SEC does have its conference tournament, so you could lose in SEC play, but you just can't lose in the SEC tournament. But I digress. And then we have another Big 12 battle. We've got Baylor and Arizona State in the battle of ranked opponents. This one's going to be fun just because I want to see what Baylor can do against Arizona State and vice versa. I also want to see what UCLA can do against Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota had that split week last week, but they have a chance to make amends for it by taking on the likes of UCLA. I think they have also got USC later on the week as well. But no, they don't. I'm sorry, but yeah, I want to see what UCLA can do on the road against Minnesota, especially since again the UCLA has another big matchup later on in the week, but that's for later. Then Thursday we don't have any ranked on ranked matchups, but this one could kind of be a sneaky good matchup. Oregon at USC. I mean, this one has trap game written all over it for the Trojans. I think USC can definitely get. Okay, so we actually have a question from this. So it's probably from Larry B. It says, "Is this the best Nebraska team we've seen under John Cook?" Okay, okay, so Nebraska is not coached by John Cook. Nebraska is actually coached by Danny Busboom Kelly, who is an alum of Nebraska. She used to be the coach of Louisville, and then John Cook retired. Well, I shouldn't say retired, but he stepped down from his position as head coach, and he's now the general manager of the Omaha Supernovas and whatnot. So, but to answer that question, this might be one of the better Nebraska teams we've seen in terms of recent history. This Nebraska team is looking pretty darn good. So I think for it's all good, Larry. It's all good, Larry. Don't worry. It's all good. I mean, it feels like John Cook is still coaching, but it just feels like Nebraska is on a whole other level. But to answer that first part of the question, this might be one of Nebraska's better teams because they pass well. They don't make a whole lot of mistakes. They force opposing teams into a lot of mistakes. And their depth is just so crazy. That's the big thing that is the kicker. That the depth that Nebraska has is just out of this world. Like if one player goes down, another player is there to pick up the slack and whatnot. It's not just one player and whatnot. Larry B asked, "What's more impressive, Indiana's 4-0 start in Big Ten volleyball or Louisville's win over Stanford?" Oh, that's a very good question, Larry. So that's an excellent question. So, I think it's Indiana being 4-0 to start Big Ten conference play. And I think that's a very good point to make just because, look, Louisville's win over Stanford was great and all, but Stanford is kind of a little young, and they've had a little bit of some growing pains. They start off with a few mixed results here and there. They obviously got demolished by Nebraska. They beat Florida to start the season, struggled a little bit against Long Beach State when they were on the road. So I think Indiana being 4-0 for the first time since 1985 is big just because that puts Indiana in the position of they could make the NCAA tournament and they're earning the respect from everyone. And if they keep winning their way, they could possibly host a regional matchup. So to answer that question, Larry, what's more impressive between Indiana and Louisville? I think it's Indiana, no doubt. But that's a very good question, Larry. I appreciate you asking that. And he says, if the tournament starts today, who's your Final Four? Okay, well, for starters, it's Nebraska without a doubt. Then we've got Texas. Who else would be my Final Four? I want to say Louisville. I think Louisville's playing better than expected. And for my last Final Four team, I want to. It's either between Kentucky or Pitt. I think Stanford is a year away from possibly contending for a Final Four spot. Don't count out Texas A&M as well. Wisconsin with Mimi Collier, perhaps. I think to answer that final question, Kentucky. So my Final Four would be Nebraska, Texas, Kentucky, and Louisville. That's my Final Four if the NCAA tournament started today. So that's another great question from Larry. I appreciate you reaching out with these questions, Larry. It means a lot, and apparently he likes my answer as well. So thank you, Larry. Anyway, back to back to the action. So Thursday, Oregon, USC, that's a trap game for USC because I think for USC, they are a good team, but they too are young because they're starting 3 freshmen. And Oregon, they have a whole different identity. But you know who really likes beating USC? Their head coach, Trent Kirsten. Why? Because he's a UCLA alum. So don't be surprised if Oregon kind of makes USC sweat in this matchup. So keep an eye on Oregon, USC. That's kind of the only notable matchup in terms of Thursday's matches. And then Friday, we have Pitt versus Miami. So Miami is actually playing great volleyball as of late, but I want to see what they could do against Pitt. They're also going to get tested by SMU this week because that's just how Miami is. They can't just always run through the entire – they can't just play the likes of Wake Forest and Georgia Tech or Duke every single week. They got to play some of the elite teams in the ACC. So let's see how Miami does against Pitt. This will either prove Miami that they are the real deal or they're just not on the level of Pitt, Stanford, and Louisville. And then we have this ranked-on-ranked matchup, Wisconsin versus Penn State. All right, this is another interesting matchup just because Wisconsin, let's see how they do with Addie Horner playing a full match against Penn State on the road. Got to remember, they're playing at Rec Hall. This one's going to be a fun one. So I want to see what Wisconsin can do on the road without its star setter. Let's see if Mimi Collier can stack up to the pressure of playing at Rec Hall. Penn State, they really need to get up off the mat here, and they really got to start proving themselves because they went from a lock in terms of the NCAA tournament to being on the bubble, which I'm sure they'll make the NCAA tournament, but I just don't think this is the same Penn State team from last year. This is clearly just not the team that was as talented as they were last year. So they got to figure it out ASAP before it starts to get a little dicey for them. Then you've got Colorado, Arizona State. That's another good ranked-on-ranked matchup. Well, Colorado is doing great guns in the Big 12. That being said, I want to see what they could do against a top 10 team from the Big 12, but we'll see. Then Saturday, we have USC versus UCLA. All right, if there's ever a time for UCLA to get up off the floor and actually perform well, it's against USC because USC and UCLA are coming into this week both on 2-game losing streaks after losing to Purdue and Indiana. So I want to see what USC can do on the road. I'm certain Pauley Pavilion is going to be packed. And it's a 12 o'clock game, so it's not going to be that bad. But I think for USC, thankfully that's a 12 o'clock game because if they played on like prime time, they would not have the fan base, considering most of their fans would probably be at the football game against Michigan. But USC UCLA, that's going to be a great matchup just because it's the battle of UCLA's stacked team versus USC's young team, and USC, I think, would really benefit to having a great win over UCLA because USC has had UCLA's number in years past. They just got to play to their ability, and they got to make sure that UCLA doesn't get hot in terms of having Sheridan Leverett just get on a heater offensively. And that is pretty much one of the only notable matchups we have in terms of Saturday, except I have another notable matchup that's not really from the Power 4 conference realm. We have Long Beach State at UC Davis. So you're probably wondering, Teran, stop with this Big West Conference bologna sausage. Look, this matchup's actually for first place. Now, UC Davis and Long Beach State have Thursday matches, which I actually didn't mention just because I know Long Beach State plays Riverside that day. Davis, I think, they play UC San Diego. So that's going to be a tricky challenge for UC Davis because San Diego is not a bad team by any means. That said, if UC Davis and Long Beach State win their Thursday matches, this battle will be for first place in the Big West Conference for the time being. So that's why I have that as probably the sneaky good match on Saturday. It's an 11 a.m. start time, so make sure you set a reminder for yourself to watch that on ESPN+. But that is a good matchup. I don't care what anyone says. That's a great matchup. Tune in for that. before you tune into USC UCLA. Anyway, so closing off the Week 7 slate, we've got Nebraska at Purdue. All right, this one's a good one. I just don't know if Nebraska will pull off. I just don't think Purdue's going to win this one. Look, Purdue looked great last week against USC and UCLA, but those two are shaky at best. Those two are kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I want to see what Purdue can do at home against the best team in the nation. I want to see if if Kenna Woolard will have another big-time matchup against Nebraska. And Larry B asks a couple of questions. He asked quite a bit of questions. This question says, is Texas actually being underrated because Nebraska looks so dominant, or are the Longhorns the quiet threat again? So you can make the argument for Texas and for Nebraska being number 1 versus number 2. Texas has the resume. Nebraska has the dominant team on paper, and I feel Texas is I think Texas is slightly underrated. I think Longhorns, everyone is not counting them out by any means. I think Texas is, I wouldn't say they're the quiet threat just because a lot of their wins are ranked wins. But I think for Texas, I think they just have I think everyone's just kind of giving the slight edge to Nebraska because of Nebraska's stacked roster, which I think is pretty darn good. And Larry B asked another great question. With both Nebraska and Texas still unbeaten, who do you think drops the match first? Oh, man, this one is probably the million-dollar question. And I'm going to say Texas. I think Texas, once they get to the likes of Kentucky, that's kind of when they're going to drop their first match. I'm not trying to say Texas. I don't. This is, with all due respect to Texas, I just think Nebraska, with the way that they're playing, nobody's slowing them down. Like the second best team in the Big West will probably, or not the Big West, the Big Ten will probably be Wisconsin, but I don't even think they have an answer, especially if Charlie Furbringer is out for extended period of time. So, yeah, so I think, in my opinion, it would be Texas to lose the match first over Nebraska, because I mean, it'll take a while for Nebraska to lose a match for the first time in this season. And same can be said for Texas. I think Texas they're not going to be losing for a while. I think both of these teams will be undefeated going into well, actually, no. Halloween night is going to be probably the biggest test for Nebraska and for Texas, because Halloween night, Nebraska is at Wisconsin, while Texas is at Texas A&M, which Texas A&M actually beat Texas last year. So that's going to be a fascinating matchup to watch for. So we shall have to wait and see. But I'll stick by my guns and say Texas drops the match first, just because I think Nebraska is just a little bit more complete. And I just think that Nebraska is just tearing teams apart limb from limb. So let me see if Larry B has another big one. Another question. It says, Louisville and Wisconsin both moved up. Which team feels more Final Four ready right now? Right now, Louisville. Because without Charlie Furbringer, I just don't think Louisville, or I just don't think Wisconsin has that it factor. I just think Louisville, in my mind, they're just a little bit more complete because they've got Chloe Chicoine on their team. And Calissa Blackshear has really stepped up as a freshman. Keep in mind, she is from Torrance, California, and she has picked up the playbook really well under Dan Meskey. So I think Wisconsin right now is more Final Four ready, until said otherwise. So Larry B has one more question, and he says, he says, how big is Louisville's win over Stanford in the grand scheme of things? Does it make them a legit title threat again? Yes. It's big because Louisville can host the regional finals, and that's big for travel just because that means they get to sleep in their own beds. They don't have to get on a plane. And Stanford, until I see Stanford winning in that big hostile environment like Nebraska or Louisville or Pittsburgh, I just don't know if Stanford is ready to make a deeper title run. I think Louisville is ready for another Final Four title run, in my opinion, just because I think Louisville, they just have the pieces, and everyone thought they were going to maybe take a step back with Danny Busboom Kelly going to Nebraska. That's not the case, just because they just look really, really good with the likes of Cara Cressy, Peyton Peterson, Chloe Chicoine, and so on and so forth, just looking really good for their team overall. And then my boy Davidson Crooks pops in the chat room. He says, hit that like button. Oh, thank you, Davidson. I appreciate you. So, where was I in terms of this week's matches? So Sunday, Nebraska-Purdue. I think it's the only notable matchup. And no, there is another one, which I think is going to be televised on ESPN. But Purdue-Nebraska, I think Nebraska wins this one on the road. I would be shocked if Purdue wound up winning this one. I'm still not sold on Purdue. If Purdue beats Nebraska, I will be sold on Purdue. I'll be sold on Purdue, and I will have a full-fledged apology for Purdue on next week's show. But until Purdue can win the big ones, I got to go with Nebraska. And then this other matchup's going to be pretty darn good. SMU versus SMU versus Miami. So this one's kind of an intriguing matchup. I want to see what SMU can do on the road, but I also want to see what Miami can do because, like I said, this week is probably the biggest test for the Hurricanes. If Miami can be at least competitive against Pitt, if they can be competitive against SMU or beat either of those teams, I think Miami has a case for actually being a threat in the ACC or being a sneaky good NCAA Sweet 16 team. But until Miami can pull off the big ones, I just think that this one's going to be a little bit of a tricky challenge. The good thing is that they're at home throughout all this week. But until then, I think Miami's going to have a little bit of a tricky challenge this week. And that is pretty much that for all of the notable matchups for this week. I also do want to make note of Hawaii's matchups between UC Santa Barbara and Cal Poly. I know Hawaii isn't really the best team in terms of the Big West. They are on the struggle bus. They are pretty much getting bit by the injury bug, but we shall see. Anyway, that's going to do it for the Week 7 preview. Let's actually take ourselves a quick commercial break. We'll make this very quick and painless. When we come back, we've got some high school girls volleyball to talk about, and we've got the Beach Pro Tour Elite 16 this week, which will be held in the United States. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson. It's your boy Notorious Law.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
That's right, everybody. Definitely check out Fast Break and all of our other shows at IE Sports Radio. So welcome back to the second half of the show. All right, so let's talk a little high school girls volleyball and whatnot. So talking high school girls volleyball. So over the weekend on Saturday, I had the longest day ever. I went to the day 2 of the Redondo Power Classic, which... it was a long day for me, and this tournament was a little bit longer than expected. So for this tournament, a lot happened on Friday. So I didn't go attend Friday, but unfortunately, Miracosta had a little bit of an emergency. They actually had an evacuation because someone decided to do something stupid and place something in a locker, which was no bueno. I'm not going to get into the full details of it. You'll just have to, figure it out yourself. I just don't want to get into the thick of it. So, yeah. So Saturday, everything was actually a little behind schedule, especially on the Miracosta side of things. Miracosta and Texas A&M were the hosts of this Redondo Power Classic, and I just gotta say, it was tough for Miracosta, but day 2 was very fun, and let's just skip on into the quarterfinals. So quarterfinals were as follows. So the quarterfinals was Miracosta versus Santa Margarita, Sierra Canyon versus Thousand Oaks, not Marin Catholic, San Clemente taking on Archbishop Mitty, and then Redondo Union taking on Skyview of Idaho. So, this was a very, 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 very fun little match. It was a very fun tournament, if you ask me. So, for starters, I didn't get a chance to see all the Miracosta matchups, which really, 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 really sucks. I could only be at one place at one time, but it is what it is, and I chose to go to Redondo Union over going to Miracosta for the time being. But it was fun. There were some fun little matchups right there. So the quarterfinal between Redondo Union and Skyview was just super, 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 super cool, if you ask me. I think in my mind, Skyview is a lot better than what the national rankings tell it. I think this is a very, 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 very fun team. Their libero is just dynamite, dude. So I think for Skyview, they lost that matchup in 3-2 Redondo Union, but I will just say it was pretty impressive, if you ask me. They were really darn good in terms of holding their own against the likes of Redondo Union, who was the part-time host of this tournament. So Brian says, "What's up, Teran? Congratulations on the news." Thank you. Don't worry, I didn't forget about the whole final announcement. I do have an announcement later on the show, but let's just get through this high school girls volleyball scene. So Redondo Union took down Skyview of Idaho in 3. Archbishop Mitty took down San Clemente in 2 sets. Mira Costa took down Santa Margarita in 3. And then Sierra Canyon swept Thousand Oaks. So the semifinals and championship took place at Mira Costa High. So the first matchup was, well, actually both matchups took place at the same time, which does not do me any favors. But I will say this for Mira Costa Sierra Canyon, that was a fun matchup. That semifinal matchup was really fun. We got to see a lot of talent. We got to see the likes of Audrey Flanagan, who's going to Wisconsin, Kendall Omarui of Sierra Canyon, she's going to Nebraska, McKenna McIntosh, she's going to USC, and so on and so forth. So in the end, Sierra Canyon wound up taking down Mira Costa in 3 sets, while Archbishop Mitty took down Redondo Union in 2 sets. Probably could have gone 3, but unfortunately just too many sets for Redondo Union this weekend. So overall, I just think that the final was kind of anticipated, but honestly, I think that it was a little expected. I thought I mean Sierra Canyon I knew was going to be in the final. I thought maybe Redondo Union would have made the final, but at the same time, I just think that it was I think that this was a little bit expected. I think Archbishop Mitty doesn't get the credit that it deserves just because for them being I wouldn't say bad team, but they're not as nationally ranked as Mater Dei or Sierra Canyon. But for them, I think they don't get the whole lot of respect just because Northern California isn't as good as as Southern California. And that's no disrespect to Northern California, just because Archbishop Mitty has an amazing history. So overall for this final, Sierra Canyon wound up winning in 3. The first set I thought kind of slipped through their fingers. I think Archbishop Mitty did a great job. However, I just think that in the second set, Archbishop Mitty got off to an early lead. They wound up kind of letting the lead slip through their fingers as Lucky Fasavalu came in and really started to take over for the Trailblazers. Eventually, Sierra Canyon took the second set in close fashion, and then the third set was just a marathon. It was decided 20-18 as Kendall Omarui put down the championship point for Sierra Canyon. So overall, it was a great win for Sierra Canyon. This could possibly be a preview for the CIF State Championship in the Open Division, but we shall see. All right, but another high school girls volleyball news. Mater Dei just continues to roll through the Trinity League. It's their league to lose at this point. I know Jay Sarah took a set off them, but honestly, Mater Dei is just Mater Dei in girls volleyball. They're not slowing down for anybody. The way they handled Santa Margarita was very impressive, just because that team has a lot of good players like Kate Jackson, Ireland Reel, Memphis Burnett, Roman Witowski, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so some high school girls volleyball matches to watch for. Tomorrow, Sierra Canyon plays at Miramount. That's the rubber match just because that one is basically number 4 in the nation versus number 3 in the nation. Well, number 4 being Miramount, number 3 being Sierra Canyon. Sierra Canyon beat Miramount last week in 5 sets at Sierra Canyon. Now let's see how they fare at Miramount. Santa Margarita Mater Dei. Look, I know Mater Dei is light years. I wouldn't say light years ahead of Santa Margarita, but I think Santa Margarita can keep this competitive. I just think that it's a short week and Santa Margarita knows what to expect with Mater Dei. So we'll have to wait and see. And then this matchup, Roncalli at number 21, Roncalli at number 7, Carroll, the Battle of Indiana. That's going to be a fun one right there. Do not sleep on that matchup. So I think it's going to be a very fun time, and do not expect the unexpected when it comes to high school girls volleyball. No notable class of 2027 commits, so there you have it. So, oh great, we may have to take one. We're gonna have to take one quick little commercial break. When we come back, we we'll talk a little bit about the Beach Volleyball Pro Tour. So keep it locked here. You were listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernan.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies.
And your one-timers.
You wicked wristas.
And be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
And we are back with Set Point. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but that is A-okay. I just needed to refresh something really quick. But now we don't have the high... Okay, so I guess my little slide did... So now, right, now it's time for the big announcement. So big announcement right here and now. So... All right. So big announcement right now. So everyone knows that the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour is going to come to Newport Beach this week. And honestly, it's in my backyard. And y'all probably found out, y'all probably said, y'all probably saw my tweet where it said, I wish I knew more about this and whatnot. But I was concerned on if I was going to get a little credential or not. But I wouldn't say my prayers were answered, but I was just holding out on hope, thinking maybe, just maybe they'll inform me sooner rather than later. And thankfully, this morning I got a email from one of the Volleyball World Media Ops, and it said, "Dear media member, your application for a media accreditation has been accepted for Beach Pro Tour Elite 16 Newport Beach. We are sharing with you the media guidelines for this event. Please make sure you follow the media guidelines and reach out for any questions." So, in other words, I'm going to be attending the Elite 16 Newport Beach Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, or Beach Pro Volleyball Tour, this weekend. So this is really awesome. I was really worried on if I was going to get a credential to this, and it really made my day. I was just so ecstatic. I was just so amazed. And I actually, someone that knew me actually kind of reached out and pretty much did what they could to try to help me. So I was very happy about that. So thank you to this anonymous person whose name I'm not going to give out until after this week, but thank you to this person for reaching out. And oh man, I am so excited to be in attendance for the Beach Pro Tour. And I'm really, really excited, and I'm really honored just because Set Point did turn 6 years old last week. And honestly, I think it's an honor to, I think it's a massive honor to attend a Beach Pro Tour tournament, just because, for starters, I don't really attend a lot of these tournaments in a whole lot, just because, they're mostly international. But I think for this week, the fact that this Beach Pro Tour tournament is going to be in my backyard, it really means a lot. So gameplay starts on the 7th. The main draw starts on the 8th, and it goes through the 11th, which will be the championship match. Sunday will actually be the Newport Beach Invitational. So it's going to be a 4-on-4 or 4v4 beach tournament. So it's going to be four-man action. So there you have it right there. I think that I will unfortunately be able to go to that just because I've got other commitments, which really sucks. I mean, maybe I'll be able to make it for a few matches, but unfortunately I won't be there for the whole day. So sadly, I won't be able to make the Newport Beach Invitational on Sunday. But the fact that I'm going to the Beach Pro Tour in Newport Beach is awesome. And yes, this was the big news that my boy Brian was referring to. And yeah, this was also the big announcement that I was referring to on Instagram and on X. So thank you, Brian, for the congratulations on the news and whatnot. So it really meant a lot. I actually almost cried when I got the email and it said application accepted, and it really just means a lot. So again, thank you to the anonymous person who I know that reached out to help pull these strings and whatnot. So I really do appreciate you, and I appreciate basically my prayers being answered and whatnot, because I was nervous. I was thinking, did I apply for this way too early? I applied for this all the way back in July, mid to late July, and I hadn't heard anything. And my mom kept asking, well, did they get back to you? And it's like, no, they didn't. So I was just thinking maybe they'll get back to me pretty much close to the event happens, or maybe they'll mail my credential. So I just had to hold out on hope and just start having a little bit more patience and faith. And thankfully, I was able to have my prayers answered, and it really meant the world to me. So I'm so excited about this, and I can't wait to bring you all the coverage from this in my backyard. So I'm not going to be there for all the days, probably just for like the main draw events and so on and so forth. So maybe like Friday and Saturday for like the semifinals and finals and maybe the quarterfinals. I do want to interview some of these big time names and whatnot. So we'll have to wait and see. You'll have to wait and see on the coverage and whatnot, but I really am excited. So I can't wait for it. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I know I just talked a lot of NCAA women's volleyball, but at the same time, it's kind of a little bit quiet on the other fronts in terms of like the pro volleyball scene. But this was the big news right here. I'm going to be a media member for the Beach Pro Tour in the Elite 16 Newport Beach tournament, and I can't wait for it. It's an honor to cover this volleyball event in my own backyard. So I can't wait for it. That'll do it for this week's episode of Set Point. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have an amazing week. Enjoy all the volleyball action. I will see you probably either Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday for the Elite 16 in Newport Beach. Have a great week, everybody. Peace.